Hello and welcome again to our daily devotionals during lockdown. And we've just completed the series of the book of Daniel. We've gone through Daniel chapter 1 through 12. And if you haven't seen those or you missed a few, those are all on the website. Those are all even on our YouTube channel. You can go there and just go to www.christbaptist.co.za and you'll be able to access the videos where in about 30 minutes or so we covered each a chapter of Daniel, 12 of them, and there's some notes on the website as well to help you navigate the prophecies there. And now that we've done that, we'd like to move into something more practical, which is how to survive lockdown. We've got another few weeks being at home, and we thought we'd take a look at something with both Carol and myself here, just talking about how to really get the most relationally out of this lockdown period where we're together. Families are going to now be together. I know there's some single people who are going to be by themselves on this. And it's going to be difficult for them because they really have to isolate and can't be with others. But we will deal with the text here that's going to help us specifically deal with relationships in lockdown. And tomorrow's segment, I think we can deal with things that you could do even individually by yourself. But here there's a specific text I'd like to deal with on how to survive lockdown, because we're all in different spaces. We're in spaces that we occupy now that we didn't occupy before, and it's going to affect our autonomy and affect some of our decision making, and our rhythms are thrown off. And so people who've been together a long time all of a sudden now aren't quite as cooperative, and what's happening with that. And I think the Bible has some things to say about that, but also I just want to introduce my wife Carol, been with her 40 years almost, and so this is a great joy to be locked down with her during this time. And I thought it'd be great we could just talk a little bit about some of that and show what the text that we've got here to help you think on and meditate on, to help you make the right decisions to actually have a great day every day during this lockdown. So I'll just introduce my wife Carol to you and just what her perspective is being here as a wife during lockdown.
Well, I'm not always a joy, but I think for wives it can be a challenge when I was used to having a schedule of my own, and I was more in control of where every minute and how life would be. And now I love having my husband around, but I'm not as productive as I can be when I'm by myself, because I find myself constantly wanting to know, does he want breakfast? Does he want lunch? Does he want tea? What is his needs for me? Does he want to talk? Does he not want me to talk? And that disrupts sort of, so it can frustrate me because I don't always know, I'm not as productive as I'd like to be. So okay. That's some of my frustrations.
Sure, and also just coming from the guy's side, there's going to be just an awkwardness of saying, how do I be productive here at the home? I can't leave, and there's things to do, and sometimes if a family's involved, we're beyond that stage here now, but if there's kids running around, then you might have a new responsibility, which is to be part of schooling your kids or time with them that isn't normally done during that time of day, and it's going to involve a different kind of schedule. Now I know it's different if people are working from home and you have to work, then if you are, then I would highly suggest you don't change your routine at all. You get up the same time you would if you drive to work, and go to a part of the house that you're going to work, and go work there, and don't be accessible. So it's just like you're going to work. That would work best in that case. But either way, you've got expectations that are changing, and that's what's the cause of the disruption and lockdown. And I'd like you to take a look. Let's just take a look at what the Bible has to say. I just want to give this thought to meditate on, and we can add a little bit here to it before we go. But in Matthew chapter 7, which is the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 7, perhaps the one passage that is most well known throughout the world by unbelievers and believers alike. They like to quote this passage more than anything. And oftentimes, unbelievers will always quote this to a believer before they even say anything. Before the believer gets a word out of his mouth, the unbeliever says, hey, I want you to know this. And it's Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. Let's take a look at it. Do not judge so that you will not be judged. You ever heard that from people? I'll bet you have. No matter what, when you're trying to come in and you want to even share the gospel, hey, don't judge. That's what they say. Well, Jesus said it. It's part of the Sermon on the Mount, and it's something that we need to understand. Unfortunately, unbelievers who read this, they want to use it to their own advantage. They don't want to read it as Jesus meant it to be said. But one observation I want you to look at in Matthew chapter 7 here, do not judge so that you will not be judged. Notice what it's coming right after. It's coming right after a section that begins in verse 25. It says, don't be worried about your life as to what you eat, drink, your body, or what you put on. Not life more than clothing. And it goes all the way to verse 34, so don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. What causes anxiety is failed expectations. I worry about tomorrow. Is it going to be like I planned? I'm going to worry about what I eat or drink. And everything in between. And it's all about anxiety because expectations are missed. Well, that's an issue of lockdown, isn't it? Expectations are missed. And we got alarms going on. Like it is here now. I'm sorry. It's the expectations of how we're going to record this. It didn't work out exactly right. But we see that. But notice here in verse 7, he says, don't judge so that you'll not be judged. The issue isn't to never judge. Verse 2 tells us, in the way you judge. See, it's how you judge, not that you judge, but it's in the way you judge, you will be judged. By the rules you establish, they will be applied to you. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. That's exactly what Jesus is saying. When you establish the method, the rules of judging, well, now you've established the communication. You've established how we're going to operate with each other. And if I'm going to be harsh, then it's going to come back harsh on me. And he gives this illustration that we all know so well. Why do you look at the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. What he's saying here is why are you looking there when you could be looking here? And so he's talking about when you're judging because you see an offense, you see a conflict. And the attitude here is before you begin to comment on the conflict, before you do that, make sure you acknowledge first your own shortcomings in that area or in an equal area, that when I'm making this comment, I'm trying to do so compassionately. I'm not trying to do so to set the record straight or to have you understand where the fault lies. He's saying, no, it says, why do you look at the speck that's in your brother's eye but don't notice the log that's in your own eye? Well, you should see what's in your own eye more clearly, shouldn't you? Because it's closer. See, it looks like a log. It's there because it's right there in front of you. You're the only guy who can't see it. And so if you want to deal with conflict in a way that's with people that you know, one of the first things we can do is I can acknowledge my shortcomings before I even talk about what I think could be helpful. I must acknowledge the log before I go to the speck. And why it's a log is because I own it. And if I own it and it's mine, I should know about my faults a lot more clearly than I know about yours. I should know how I offend. And I've known after 40 years of marriage, I think I should know how to offend. And so I should do that. And so acknowledge your own shortcomings, offenses, as you're going to enter into a discussion about how to move forward. And so acknowledge the log before the spec. So acknowledge your own shortcomings here. And then secondly, Jesus, what he says is, or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? I mean, how can you be fault finding when it's so clear to the world who you are that's saying this? So he says in verse 5, you hypocrite. You hypocrite. First take the log out of your own eye, and then you'll see clearly take the speck out of your brother's eye. You hypocrite. See, a hypocrite is somebody who is hiding their own, who they are, and hiding their own issues to come across as somebody different. So the second step that I think you should take is you want to identify with your brother. You don't want to be a hypocrite. So first you acknowledge that, yeah, I've got shortcomings too, and then identify, say, yeah, you know what, that is tough. As I'm talking about the speck, I'm talking about the fault that needs to get fixed. I don't want to be a hypocrite on it, as if I never do that, or in that way I identify. I said, that's a problem. I understand. I'm understanding your difficulty in lockdown. I'm understanding your pressures. I'm understanding some of that. I'm understanding why things are being, why you're saying the things you're saying or doing the things you're doing. This is awkward. So you're compassionate. You're identifying with. And then what you want to do, he says there in verse 5, you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Your brother doesn't want the speck there, and you don't want the speck there. So what are you doing? The third thing you want to fight for is not to correct your brother. Not to say, aha, see, I got it, and we pulled this out. The goal is that you and your brother both want the speck removed. But you and your brother also want the log removed. But you do that first. So what's the third aspect of how to really survive in this conflict is you strive for unity. You strive for unity. Don't strive to be right. Don't strive to be correct. Don't try to be the one who pointed out the fault. Don't strive to say, see, I told you that. Don't strive to be vindicated. Strive for unity to where you both see both specks. See, they're both specks. It's just a log in your eye because it's right there in your eye and you can see it. It looks like a huge log once you open your eye. But you both got specks because a log won't fit in an eye. It looks like a log to you. It should look like a log to you. See, that's why he says take it out first, because even though it's a speck, everybody knows it should look like a log to you because it's right there in your eye. So you acknowledge your own shortcomings, identify with the person, identify compassion with the weaknesses and the external things that are happening that cause that, and then in your dialogue, seek to find unity to where we both want this. I don't want you to give up something and I walk away feeling vindicated. I don't want to take something away from you. I want you and I both to want the same thing, which is unity. Unity in honoring God, unity in having a happy place, a place where we can serve one another. That's what we want. And so we want to push for unity. That's what Jesus is talking about here. And it's coming right after anxiety, which is people running around saying, oh no, I'm worried about tomorrow. Oh no, is the lockdown going to keep going? Oh no, I'm out of my comfort zone. Right after that he says what? Don't judge, lest you be judged. Now is the time to show what kind of person you are. Do you really worry about tomorrow or not? Are you really anxious or not? If you're not, you really heed Jesus' words, you'll relax and you'll understand. I have shortcomings. We've got to come together, and my goal is to actually draw closer to you, not to point out so that I'm more righteous. That'll help us in our lockdown situation, just that simple biblical principle there. And I think that will help as we're in our spaces, that is, different than we normally occupy, it'll give us something to think about, that the goal isn't to always be right or king of the castle. The goal is unity with the people where we are. So that's what God's word has for us today. Any final words? Mrs. Beakley.
Well, I just think, in light of the passage, there are so many things that I do that I try my husband, being frustrated or tired or needy. And because of that, I feel like we all need to try very hard to be patient with one another and giving to one another, looking for opportunities to give to each other. I heard once an example of bank, I withdraw a lot from his bank of how I'm grumpy or something in the day. And so when he needs something, I want to try to go out of my way to try to help, to try to fill that bank that I've been withdrawing from all day long. So I think part of taking the log and dealing with the log is I don't have to deal with every speck that's in his eye, because I have so many logs that are in my own. So I think I just need to, I try to just, when I can, to give where I can. And yeah, I don't know if that helps.
Okay, and a final thought, just to get a picture of log and speck here. Here's a log that many of us don't think about. It's whenever we use the words always, never, all the time you do this, we're starting to throw logs around when we do that. And that's what we want to avoid, is speaking to the extreme to make your point, to win the argument. We want to avoid hyperbole where we can, because that creates logs out of specks, and that's what we'd rather not do. So if you can think about this, that the goal of all of this is unity, because that is the goal of Scripture, that Christians be unified, husband and wife be unified. Not be right, not be in a better position, not be more comfortable, be unified. That's everything. And so that is the devotion for today, to help us during lockdown. When you make decisions and you might find conflict going, remember Matthew chapter 7. How do you judge? How do you make judgments? You got to make sure that you can really acknowledge your own deficiencies to set the stage that you have a platform to speak. Identify with the person you're speaking with, be compassionate toward them, and then strive for unity. And you're both going to seek the same goal and achieve the same goal. Well, that's the point. Matthew 7, the first few verses in lockdown. Thank you for being with us here in this devotion.